suspicious. I'd never met Margaret. She died a year before I met Hugo. But she had been Jemmy's mother, and I felt angry at the man for behaving as he had. In this day and age, a woman didn't recover easily from such treatment, particularly if she had no family to turn to, or income to fall back on. Margaret had eventually returned to Cranley, but only after Hugo had come upon her in the street, prostituting herself to survive. Hugo had brought her back and helped her get back on her feet. But the girl who left and the woman who returned were not the same person.
No, that was his cousin, Nicholas Marsden, Hugo clarified. Luke is here with Sir William Trumbull, the English envoy. I think James II sent Luke to keep Sir William in check, as he's a zealous opponent of Catholicism and seeks to improve the conditions of Protestants in France after the Edict of Fontainebleau.
Which is? I asked, not really wanting to know.
The Edict of Fontainebleau revoked the Edict of Nantes, which granted French Protestants substantial religious freedoms. Louis XIV felt that it was an affront to him, as a Catholic king, to have heretics practicing their religion openly in his country. The Huguenots are being persecuted once again, something that Sir Trumbull vehemently opposes.
Why does everything always come down to religion? I asked, annoyed. Why can no one just let anyone worship as they see fit? I knew I was being ridiculous, but blamed it on pregnancy hormones. This was 17th century Europe, the hotbed of religious intolerance and persecution, not 21st century England, which, incidentally, had its own share of problems. As much as the world had changed, it hadn't changed all that much. In the 21st century, religious intolerance was still very much alive in some parts of the world, but slightly more subtle due to the veneer of civilization that cloaked the hatred that still seethed beneath the surface. True, Catholics and Protestants were no longer slaughtering each other en masse, but now the world was fixated on problems in the Middle East, especially since the region seemed to grow more unstable by the day. Hugo dismissed the question and pulled me closer, nibbling on my ear.
Luke was very glad to see me, although it took him some time to recognize me.
I do look a fright, Hugo said with a sigh. I didn't argue. The handsome nobleman I'd met last year now had dirty blonde hair with 2-inch-long black roots, clothes that had seen better days, and boots that were practically worn through. To anyone who didn't know him, he looked like a down-on-his-luck merchant, not a scion of a noble, titled family. I trust Luke got over his confusion?
Yes, he did. And he's offered to help us. He will call on us tomorrow with his tailor. The first order of business is the state of our wardrobe, Hugo said, as he glanced at my one gown, which hung over the chair in all its parts. We cannot do anything until we are all properly attired. Everyone will be fitted for new clothes tomorrow.
What about a place to live? I asked, voicing my greatest concern. I didn't care as much for new gowns as I wanted a place to call home. We'd been staying at inns since the beginning of September, and I wanted a place of our own, even if it was tiny and unfashionable. Hugo and I had barely had any privacy since leaving London, and had to share our room with Jem and Francis more often than not on the way to Paris. Archie chose to stay in communal quarters, where he shared a bed with other travellers. But he didn't mind. He wasn't fussy. At this point, a room of my own with a bed made up with clean linens was my idea of heaven.
That might take a little longer. But have patience, my sweet. I promise you a home where we can be happy and comfortable.
Luke Marsden arrived at noon on the following day, as promised, and whatever resentment I might have felt toward his philandering cousin did very little to stop me from liking him. Luke was in his early 30s, with a mane of dark blonde, wavy hair, which he